All right, we're talking with Navy veteran Hubert Johnson with Guardian Tax Law. So, Hubert, you spent 3 years in the Navy a few years ago. Why don't you start off and tell us what you did in the Navy?
I was a deck seaman. So I went straight out of high school, wanted to go see the world, get some college money, and you know, that was my dream.
Yeah. So, what was your transition like? Was it, were you well prepared for it, expecting it long in advance, fully prepared? What was that like?
Well, I went through a little different situation. I got hurt while I was in the Navy. 19, I messed up some discs in my back and was actually medically discharged. So my last year and a half, I was on medical duty, had some surgeries, and I actually got out 3 months later than my enlistment date due to that. So it was very different. Not a normal. Everything's fine. You finish and you go home happy.
Yeah.
But when I got out, I had plans to go on a mission. So I went and served a 2-year mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So I went down to Peru for that. And when I came back, I was just going to college. And that's what was on my mindset. So I just went straight to college.
Yeah. And then, so you're talking like 5 years out of high school, fully prepared and mentally developed and everything, ready to go to school.
Yeah, I wasn't nearly as prepared for college or wise at 17 as I was at 23.
Right.
So no, I was a bit older, had my head on my shoulders, but at the same time, when I got out, one of the smartest things I did was I went to the local VA and they gave me advice, they gave me counsel. I actually got a job there for a while. There were VA offices in the local town, and there was a VA representative on campus as well, and that was a big help for me.
Hmm. So at some point, somehow you must have ended up in law school.
Yeah, I actually was going to be a high school history teacher. That was my goal,
Yep.
and they started firing teachers all across the state in California, and so I started looking around. What else can I do with a history degree? So I went to law school instead, and fell into tax law. I actually took tax law in high and law school and hated it. And I ended up teaching the same class later on. Life is funny.
Yeah. So, like, aren't is it real estate or tax attorneys that are like some of the highest paid attorneys?
I don't think it's tax, but again, I run my own business. But I think real estate, personal injury, but it really depends. It depends if they land those big whale of a cases, which sometimes just come along once in a blue moon. We're pretty consistent. Our fees are fixed, so we're not sitting there hitting 100,000 on a case or hitting the jackpot and breaking in $1 million. That's just not our business model and how it runs.
Yeah. Well, so ultimately, how did you arrive at tax law as being your main focus?
I needed a job. That plain and simple. My life kind of fell apart. I graduated from law school a month before the bar exam. My wife got very, very sick, and she was in a hospital for 5 months. Um, and I just needed a job. And so I was interviewing everywhere I could, and they hired me back in 2009. I started as a tax attorney and just kind of fell in love with it. I've been doing it ever since.
Yeah. And then ultimately, talk some about how you went out on your own, and that even though you're a tax attorney, you're really an entrepreneur running your own business.
So running my own business has been its own challenge in itself. And I mean, the main reason for that is in law school, they don't teach you anything about how to be a business owner.
Right.
They teach you the bare bones of the law. And then I didn't know anything about tax law. And this is all administrative law. So I learned how to do the work, but running a business is a whole nother ball of wax. Now I helped start a couple businesses. I had managed by then. I had managed apartments. I had managed, starting a company from the ground up, and a couple companies from the ground up. So I had a little bit more information. But again, starting my own company, the number one thing is getting a lead source. And when that happened, and I had a regular stream of leads coming in, I looked for other ways. And one of the best things you can do as an entrepreneur and in life in general, find a mentor. Find people that have more business savvy experience There are plenty of business coaches out there, but find someone that's going to kind of take you under their wing and help you along. And that's been one of the smartest things that has helped me not make too many mistakes. So people, especially if you start your own business, talk to a business attorney first. Again, a couple-hour consultation isn't going to cost you an arm and a leg. Get a CPA or bookkeeper, someone to help you do things right from the beginning, because we try to educate so people don't end up as our clients.
Yeah. All right, back talking with Navy veteran Hubert Johnson with Guardian Tax Law. So you deal with a lot, probably with individuals, but you're probably dealing with a lot of businesses and business taxes and people getting in, basically, entrepreneurs getting in trouble with their taxes. One reason, or what are some of the biggest problems you see small business owners getting into?
Where they don't set up their business correctly, where they don't get expert advice early on, and then we have to come in and fix the mess, so to speak. I had someone just hire us where they have an issue in Indiana. They're a California company and had one employee in Indiana.
Huh.
And now they have thousands of dollars owed to Indiana over just this one W-2 employee in Indiana, and they have no idea how to fix it. So it's just a mess. But again, the person that set it up left the company now. They didn't get their passwords. But again, that's something that we fix. We work with states all the time. But I had someone Monday come in and meet with me. They had a hairdressing business, and they had grown. They had operated for many, many years and gotten by, but they were doing the same thing they had always done, and they hadn't really upped their financial game. So they didn't know what they were making. They weren't caught up on estimated tax payments they had owed for many years. And that was really catching up to them. And they're looking at, do I close my business?
Mm.
Or is there a way to keep my business open and continue to manage my business? And that's one thing that I love about what we do, is that we save businesses all the time. We save livelihoods. When people come in, if you don't have good numbers, you don't know what you're making.
Yeah.
And how do you plan? How do you budget when you don't know what your income is?
Yeah. I see it all the time. I mean, I'm not just you're interview number 584 over the last 10 years, and I've seen other people running their businesses, and oftentimes the person running the business is the one that's standing in their way of the business expanding, and you don't have your books in order. I got to tell you, like back in the very beginning when I started down this entrepreneurial road, somehow a buddy of mine recommended bench bookkeeping, and I jumped on it. It's not really cheap, but I've been audited by the state of Kansas, state of Missouri, and the federal IRS. We had a federal audit, and all three of them we won. It was their mistake, but each one of them was a 9 month or a year, and the federal was 2 year fight with them. And at one point, Kansas went into my bank account and pulled $1,500 right out of my bank account because they thought I owed them money, and I didn't. And I mean, talk about intrusive. And we were getting phone calls saying we can repossess your house and everything from the government tax agencies because they thought we owed them money, and I knew we didn't, and we didn't. And the one thing that saved us every time was our books. Our books were solid. Bench bookkeeping kept everything in order over the years. We could answer every question they asked right here, right here. Here's the answer right here. It's all. If our bookkeeping had been a disaster, we probably wouldn't have been able to fight back. It saved us.
I just looked at an audit report for one of our clients yesterday that didn't have good bookkeeping, and we're winding this down. So we've already saved this guy millions of dollars, and it's the last few issues, but he has $54,000 unaccounted for, and that's all going to be taxable income. He's going to have to pay another 15 grand on that or so. If he can't account for what that money was for, it's going to all count as straight income. And I don't think he has a clue because he didn't have good bookkeeping. He is now with the CPA. His books are straightened out. But one of the things that looks at it, and even if you have decent bookkeeping and you have a CPA you use, most people won't, it's very typical for businesses to file extensions and not file their return till October
Mm-hmm.
or September for businesses, September 15th for businesses, and their personal returns by October 15th. You're almost all the way through the current year before you have an idea of what you earned the previous year.
Yeah.
That's old information.
Mm-hmm.
You can't rely on that. You can't plan with that. And the IRS has come out, Congress, this is very bipartisan. November 23, they jacked up the interest rate for not prepaying your taxes throughout the tax year from 3% to 8%. And 24 is the first year people are going to get hit with that much higher penalty. So if you're not paying throughout the year, at least quarterly, if you are self-employed or if you're under withholding on your W-2 income, expect an 8% penalty even if you pay everything off by April 15th. It's
Wow.
going to surprise a lot of people. So everybody I talk to is like, okay, let's get your CPA on board. Let's start doing quarterly profit and loss statements. You can use those to plan, to know what's going on. And then you can pay your estimated taxes every single quarter. If people need it, I say do it monthly.
Mm-hmm.
If that even helps them, if that helps them even more. But it helps them stay out of trouble. It helps them have good books. And then they avoid more interest and penalties because you are required to pay throughout the year. Just in the past, the penalty was so low, most CPAs say, oh, you can invest it and make more money. That's not true anymore.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, we've made this 6 month extension to October several times. I think this year is one of the most recent years where we're actually on track to get it done on time. So, but yeah, I didn't realize about that the interest rate had been jacked up.
Yeah, and even if you pay your taxes in full by April 15th, if you're not paying it quarterly, you're going to get hit by that. So that's why paying throughout the year is really important. It's going to save people a lot of money to do that.
Wow. Um, what are speaking of bookkeeping? What are some of the best bookkeeping tools or companies or like? Do you have any recommendations?
I see what people use. We don't do bookkeeping. We don't do tax preparation either. We focus on resolving playing with
Sure.
we deal with the fun stuff, the nasty stuff. But QuickBooks is very well known. If you have a bookkeeper or someone that can help guide you through the process, that's excellent.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned, a program that has really worked well for you. Here's the thing: if you find something that works for you, a program or a bookkeeper or CPA that will do your bookkeeping, it is so worth having someone deal with the book so you can focus on what you do best. Work in your flame, as the saying goes. I had a friend, and he had a custom copper roofing company, and he just worked in the Bay Area. I was in Sacramento at the time because there wasn't enough money in Sacramento area, so he was always going to the Bay Area. His wife was maintaining his books. His wife was not a CPA, bookkeeper, or anything, and royally messed it up. He owed the IRS, ended up owing them $150,000, the state $100,000. And we got a team behind him. We got a bookkeeper, we got a CPA, we got a business attorney, and then brought me on to handle the taxes. We took all that pressure off of him. He was able to focus on his business, got an extra crew going, and paid it all off in under a year and a half.
Nice.
And then he knew how much he was making, and he was living in an 800 square foot home with 3 kids, doubled the size of his home, landscaped his yard, had a playground that he put in there for his, play structure for his kids, and it was made such a huge difference in his life because he didn't have to worry about all those books. He knew it was being taken care of, and he was getting regular updates. So it really made a huge difference for him.
Yeah. I mean, in some ways, it's depending on the business. It's not that hard, especially if you're only using like one bank account or even two. Just everything in and out of those bank accounts, make sure it gets properly categorized, and that's like 80, 90% of the battle right there, but you just have to do it or make sure you got somebody doing it.
You have to keep your personal separate from your business, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is a huge issue.
When I say one bank account, I mean like one bank account for the business, not one bank account for everything in your life.
Oh, there are plenty of people that do that.
Across the streams.
Yeah, and the IRS will scrutinize those and disallow a lot of legitimate business expenses if you miss business with personal. So, separate business account. Do not mix. Do not treat your business account as your little piggy bank, because then when you get audited, I mean, you had clear books, clear numbers. It really helped you out. And I've seen that plenty of times. But if you don't have good numbers, or if you are treating the business account like your own piggy bank, you'll lose out on a lot of legitimate deductions.
Yeah, they're automatically suspect of the whole thing if you're not even keeping things separate.
Right.
So, yeah. Um, so what are some other things that come to mind as far as keeping your small business out of tax trouble?
So I'm going to go a little bit different direction and talk about the order, of taxes. What's the scariest taxes, and then kind of move down from there.
Okay.
The number one taxes you never want to owe is sales tax. Because it's state taxes, and as Kansas was threatening to come take your home. Again, a lot of that's them just breathing hot air at you and trying to scare people into action. But the states are much more aggressive than the IRS, and they will assess it to you personally. So if your business folds, they will come after you personally for that state tax, for the sales taxes. And there are a few states that offer and compromise on it, but it's really hard to get rid of it. So sales tax, number one thing you want to make sure you're on top of, that you're paying regularly. And if the business falls, it will follow you personally. So that's the nastiest one out there.
I mean, really, that kind of makes sense, because if you think about what sales tax is you're collecting extra money from a customer in order to give to the state.
Right.
You don't give it to the state, you keep it for yourself. I mean, that's how the state looks at it. That's why it's so serious.
It is how the state looks at it, but for business owners, it's just another tax burden.
Right.
And if they don't have clear books where that money is set aside immediately, it is so easy to not pay taxes and make payroll instead. And that's where people run into these pitfalls instead of having good practices and making wise business decisions, which sometimes is, okay, I can't pay my taxes. I need to shut this down.
Yeah.
And sometimes we have that come to Jesus moment with people and like, can you really afford to keep working here? But that segues into the next tax, payroll. So you talk about them treating payroll seriously. They treat this as you're stealing from your employees.
Yeah.
So payroll taxes, state and federal, they are very aggressive about these. I've seen the IRS padlock businesses, shut them down. We've saved many businesses with these issues, but you want to make sure you're on top of your payroll taxes. What the IRS tells people is that if you can't pay your payroll taxes, don't make your payroll. It's that simple. If you can't pay your people and pay the taxes that go with it, don't dig that hole. Don't rob them of Social Security, Medicare taxes. Pay your people, and you can be held personally liable for half of those taxes.
Wow.
And the IRS is very aggressive about it. So for us, when we get involved, it's kind of like riding a bull. So you want, depending where they are in the case, we jump into cases where they're ready to shut down businesses, and we have to dive in and get all the documents and start negotiations right away. It's always better to talk to us before it's a mess, before you have a revenue officer coming to your business, your place of business, coming to your home. That's where it gets really scary. But we step into cases at all stages. But it's best to avoid it. Make sure, if you have a payroll company, if they mess it up, which we've seen, you've got to make sure that those are getting taken care of. So you have sales taxes is the worst, payroll taxes, and then personal taxes actually are more important that they're paid than business taxes. The reason I say that is personal taxes will, of course, follow you personally.
Right.
Whereas business taxes, if you run up 1120 debt, corporate on corporate tax returns, et cetera, and you close out the business, that debt goes away. doesn't follow you personally. So other two
Dude,
types of 2029 2290s. There's plenty of other types of taxes that aren't payroll. That if your business fails, you can close out the EIN, close out the business, and you can even go open a new business, but it just has to be a different kind of business. They don't want to see you close out one EIN and just reopen another, which people have done, and they're wise to that.
so if your business owes business taxes and the business folds, the business tax doesn't have to get paid somehow?
No, you close it out as a defunct corporation, and the business entity under the EIN is liable, or
Mm-hmm.
the employee identification number.
Yep.
For those that don't know what an EIN is. So you use it instead of your social, and all tax accounts follow either a social security number or an EIN
Mm-hmm.
or an ITIN if you have it, but that functions just like a social. So if it's under an EIN and you close it out, they have no recourse. And it's easier to do than you would think.
Wow, I never realized that. what if it's just a what if it's just a regular LLC that has an EIN, but it's just being operated technically, I guess as a sole proprietorship, but it's an LLC.
So if the taxes are under the social, they'll be personally liable for it. So if they're just using a Schedule C, but if their taxes are under an 1120 or 1120S for an S corp, or if they're under a 1065 for a partnership, it's under the EIN. The taxes are under the EIN.
Okay.
So one word of the wise: if you have a partnership, if you have an LLC with multiple members, do not step away until your name is off of everything in that business, and including with the IRS and states, because I have seen way too many people burned. They step away. Oh, I retired. My partners are taking care of this. All of a sudden, they have this huge tax debt, and they're being held personally liable for it because they're still part. We're still part of the business.
Mm.
And I've seen this happen. We've been helping with SBA loan defaults, and one guy left 5 years prior, but his name was on the loan. The business was supposed to take him off the loan, never did. And then all of a sudden, when they defaulted, he's being held personally liable for this debt. And there was nothing we could do for him.
Wow.
Yeah. So when you step away from a business, talk to a business attorney, talk to a tax attorney, make sure you do it right and that you're completely removed from those liabilities.
Well, Hubert, if somebody's interested in getting help from Guardian Tax Law, how do they go about finding you?
Well, our phone number is 520-485-7371. Also, our website is at guardiantaxlaw.com. You can check us out. We also have a ton of YouTube videos, and we're on Facebook, Instagram. I'm not sure what all we're on. My marketing team handles that, but you can always give us a call. We give free consultations.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason we do that is we don't feel that you should have to pay an arm and a leg just to find out which direction to turn. And there's plenty of times we talk to people and they don't need us, and we can give them a simple, steer them in the right direction and help them out. Yeah. So there's been plenty of times I've just referred someone to a CPA. You don't need me. You can take care of this much easier, especially when people file tax returns and they use a program that's not sufficient. So one gal owed, it was about $120,000. She sold her home, retired, and moved to Arizona to retire. Used a program cheaper than TurboTax, in her words. Didn't take the $250,000 individual deduction for capital gains on the sale of her home. Didn't even put her mortgage down as affecting the basis of the home. I looked at it, I said, well, you're broke as a joke now. She's retiring on Social Security. We can easily do an offer and compromise, but let's go a cheaper route. Instead of paying us thousands, let's pay a CPA a couple $100, amend your return, and wipe out the entire balance. And that's what she did.
Nice. Wow. On the entrepreneurial side of things, you like working for yourself or working for somebody else better?
Is that a question? I love working for myself. I joke around that I have multiple bosses. My office manager bosses me around. My legal assistant tells me what to do, but I love working for myself. I work from home. Most of the time I have off. We have offices in Tucson and Phoenix, and I go to the office fairly regularly, but I get to make the decisions. I don't have to deal with bosses making ridiculous decisions or not standing up
Mm-hmm.
um, for their employees when they should. My last job, I ran into some conflicts and things just got stupid. So I'm like, I'm out.
Yeah.
And that's when I launched my own company. It's like, I'm just done working for other people and I want to do things right.
Jumping back to one tax question, you can represent anybody in all 50 states, even if they're in fights with the state tax authority.
So, good question. We could represent people in all 50 states and territories. I've actually handled cases from Guam to Puerto Rico, except for Oregon and Washington. You
Yeah.
have to be, even as a CPA, you have to be licensed in those states to represent people for state taxes. Nobody else cares.
Hmm.
I do work all the time in New York. We do offer and compromises on a regular basis in New York. We work in California all the time. I've represented people in Kansas, Illinois, Georgia, Maryland. I mean, all over the place. It's just, yeah,
Yeah.
Oregon and Washington are special.
What's that? I haven't heard that term before. Offer and compromise.
Offer and compromise is where you settle with the IRS.
Okay.
So it's a very specific program, and I compare it to Cinderella's slipper. Only about 20 to 30% of people qualify for it. But when you do, it's an amazing program. So I actually can pull up some stats real quick. We get probably 1 to 2 accepted every week.
Hmm.
And it's just because I've been doing it so long.
Is this more sophisticated than a payment plan?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
So a payment plan could take, you can set up in just a couple months. They even have it set up on irs.gov where you can set up payment plans much quicker than that on your own. You just need to make sure all the ducks are in a row, all the tax returns are filed, there aren't any issues, but you also miss areas where you can save money. Sometimes we can save people a lot of money, sometimes we can't. But with an offer and compromise, it's at least 8 to 9 month process.
Uh-huh.
And we have a case right now where we are appealing it. And so if the IRS is just, they're making a lot of mistakes now. And so we're having more cases than ever that we've had to appeal. And it adds another 6 to 7 months to a case. So it can easily be a 1.5 to 2 year case to do an offer and compromise. And through the whole process, the IRS is trying to reject it. So we just had a case. They owed $41,874. We offered $20 to settle it. The IRS came back with the counter offer for $3,100. Can you pay us a little more? Client couldn't, so we contested it and got it back down to $20.
From 41,000.
Let me read you some more. Another case. Right? 142,000 settled for 9,700.
Why would they settle for so little?
Because it's a fixed program. So this is a program that's been around for decades. It's a lot of people know about it. A lot of professionals will sell it as a fresh start initiative, a fresh start program. So they have different names for the same program that's been around. It gets tweaked by every administration.
Yeah.
But it's essentially the same thing. You have to show that you qualified. If you qualify by their standards, looking at assets and income compared to expenses, you can get amazing deals. So, where was I? You have 31,000 settled for $20, another 170,000 settled for $4,200. Another one here. 17,000. We offered $20 and they counted at $426. And the client was like, I can wrap this up for $426. And went, yeah. And so he accepted the counter offer. And that's all he had to pay to settle over 17 grand.
Wow.
And so it's just
heard that term, offer and compromise.
Offer it is if you not everybody qualifies, but if you do qualify, it is an amazing service. True story. I had a guy. He was referred to me. He didn't want to talk to me at first. So I work with a financial advisor. Um, through I do a lot of networking, business networking, and she represented his parents, and his parents, her parents mentioned to the financial advisor that their son had tax issues. She said, "You've got to talk to Guardian Tax Law." So he called us up and he was like, "Look, I've already talked to two attorneys. They both told me I don't qualify. I've got on. I went online. The IRS program said I don't qualify. I don't think you can do anything for me." I said, "Okay, can you give me 20 minutes? Go over your financial information, see what we can do." Okay. Went through his numbers. He didn't qualify at that time, but we made two tweaks and settled $80,000 for around 7,000.
And qualifying means like how much money, assets, income you have. Is that basics of it?
It does, but it's more focused on equity and assets. So you can own properties. You can have retirements. True story, I had a gal, she owed around $200,000 in the middle of our offer. And here she is, a little old lady on Social Security, easy candidate for an offer and compromise. Her mom dies in the middle of it, gets $300,000. We buy her a house and invest the rest and create an income stream for her in retirement and still get the $20 offer.
$20, the magic number, huh?
Well, you can go lower than 20. You can do 10. When I'm like, $20, come on.
Wow. That's crazy.
So, yes, I mean, there's been offers for, you can offer $1 to the IRS, but that's kind of like spit in their face.
Yeah.
Maybe $20 is too, but it's just the same thing. You can pick the number. You just can't offer zero. And that's the dangerous part is a lot of people will say they know what they're doing. And if they don't have the experience, I had one case where this gal came to us. She had submitted an offer. It was rejected. She didn't understand why. And it came back that the guy had offered $0. And it says on the form, you cannot offer $0. Yeah. I reviewed her information, verified everything was good, wrote $20 in, submitted it, and it was accepted. Wow. But you can have income. I have people that make 10 grand or more that qualify. You just have to have the expenses to match that. You don't have to be broke as a joke. You just have to have a situation where you can't pay all their bills within a certain time frame. Mm-hmm. And the more someone owes, the more likely they're going to qualify. So I've had people, when people owe hundreds of thousands, even millions, I have a $1 million offer I'm working on right now. It's more likely that you're going to qualify.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, Hubert, we're pretty much out of time, so I want to give you the last word. As far as the entrepreneurship side of things is concerned, if you're talking to somebody getting out of the military or just got out not too long ago, getting in entrepreneurship, running their own business, what kind of advice comes to mind?
One, go to
your books are in order.
One, make sure your books are in order, but go to the VA. You'd be surprised how many times you can get help, and these are veterans that have been there, done that, and they want to help you out. There's plenty of veterans organizations out there. 2, get expert help. 3, get a mentor, someone that's been there before. A great business networking group that I use that's all across the country is called BNI. And there are other networking groups out there where you can go and meet with other professionals that help each other and lift each other up. Mm-hmm. You need those people around you. There's business coaches that their whole job is to help people out. And talk to other veterans and find help because there's plenty of help out there.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Hubert, for sharing your veteran entrepreneurial success story, and appreciate all the great tax information. Number of things I hadn't heard of before, so it's very helpful, and appreciate you sharing.
Yep, my pleasure.
All right, look forward to seeing your future success. These two veterans are Oscar Mike.